Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to Keeping Fish Simple. So in today's video, we are going to be doing another vlog. Now, I've actually been away over the weekend, as I was talking about in my last vlog, camping with my mates. And before that, we did a lot of prepping in the fish room to make sure that we didn't have any fry in the fish room and we didn't embark on any breeding. But now that we're back, there's a lot of things that have been going on in the fish room and a lot of things that I want to try and work on while I've got the chance to do it. So first things first, if we come on over to these two tanks, you can see here we've got our colonies of L134s. Now, I've actually got 3 colonies of these guys, and we're only going to be looking at 2 of them today because one of the colonies is a little bit young. But these 2 colonies house some adults that I bought about 6 to 7 months ago that I want to try and breed. So there's a few things that I probably need to do to try and get these guys to breed. And the first thing is conditioning them. So I don't think we're going to be able to breed them in the next month because I don't think they're conditioned properly, but I want to just start altering some things in the fish room to try and get them a little bit more frisky and in the mood for breeding and hopefully get some of those females gravid with eggs. So the first thing I do, I normally keep the fish room at about 28 degrees Celsius. That doesn't mean that every tank in the fish room is at 28 degrees Celsius. Normally it's the top tanks that are 28 degrees Celsius on the racks, and then the mid tanks are about 24 to 25, and then the bottom tanks are about 22 degrees Celsius. That does jump up during summer, but during winter that's the temps of those tanks. Now, what I'll do is I'll decrease this by a couple of degrees down to about 25, and that'll gradually decrease the temperatures in all the tanks. Now, this is especially good for L134s, I've heard. Keep in mind, I've never bred these guys before. And a lot of other breeders have been telling me to lower the temperatures in the tanks to get them more frisky. And the other thing we're going to be doing is some water changes with some RO water. So, as you can see here, we've got my RO unit, and this is a very easy setup to do. This is like $70 on eBay. I'll try and find a link for one of these and put it down in the description below, but what this does is it filters water and it takes all the minerals out of it and turns it into pure water. Now, this is very similar to rainwater. I could collect rainwater, but that's not very reliable and I don't have a rainwater reservoir. So I just stick to RO water, and what we're going to be doing is gradual water changes over the next couple of days to bring the TDS in the water down. So TDS is the total dissolved solids in the water, and the lower we can get that, the more likely that the fish will think that there's been a rain. So you can see if we take our TDS pen out and we do a test in our first tank, we're sitting at about 261 parts per million. So a little bit higher than we'd like for breeding, but not going to affect the fish at all. And then in our other tank, we're at about 156 parts per million. So a little bit lower, and I'm not too sure why this would be. This is maybe because there's more driftwood or something like that in the aquarium, but nonetheless, we still have to lower these 2 numbers. So I went ahead and did some water changes with some RO water, filled them back up. I did about 30 to 40% water changes. And you can see here that we've lowered our TDS in the first tank, and in the second tank, we've only lowered it to about 120 parts per million. So we'll just keep doing that over the next couple of days and try and lower that TDS a little bit more. And as we do this, because there's not as much solids in the water, our pH is also going to go down. So don't just try and get this number to 0, because your pH is going to be a lot more likely to crash. And that's because we don't have any carbonate hardness in the water. So you want a little bit of dissolved solids in the water, but not too much, just so that they think there's been a rain. So another thing I went ahead and did was to get that pH to come down a little bit more. I decided to add an Indian almond leaf to each of the tanks. And what this will do is it'll release its humic acids over the next coming days in the form of tannin, and that's going to help to lower the pH and stimulate a rain environment. So that, with the temperature and the TDS, should work really good for trying to trigger these guys. And if it doesn't trigger them, we'll bump the temperature up in the room again, and we'll just keep repeating this, and hopefully the males will start to recognize that it's time to breed when these things happen. Another thing I wanted to show you guys in the fish room is the progression of our little peppermint bristlenose babies. The reason I'm showing you this is just because I fed them, and I just wanted to show you how beautiful these little guys look. You can see here we've got a tank full of grow outs, and these guys are about 2 months away from being sold, but they look absolutely phenomenal and they're super cute. So you can see here they're eating some green beans, and they've been doing absolutely phenomenal in this tank. If you come up here, you can see as well we've got our adult male, and he's on eggs again. Now, this is kind of pointless showing you because this male actually ate his eggs the next day, and as of recording this voiceover, I'm a little bit disappointed and don't really want to talk about it anymore. But nonetheless, it's all good. They will breed again, and I think the next time this male's on eggs, I will pull them, and that way he can't eat them because he's been a little bit of a bad male and he's kicked out the eggs before, and he's just not a good breeder. So we'll try and just get those eggs out earlier next time, but you can see all of our little babies are doing fantastic. Now, like I was talking about in the last vlog, I do want to try and figure out a better way to breed these rams in the fish room, because currently the only way I've been able to breed them has been leaving the fry in with the parents, and that just hasn't been reliable. I've had 1 or 2 pairs do it successfully, but for the most part, the parents just continue to eat the eggs, and we have to move on to a new option to try and find a better way to breed these guys. So the only option is to try and raise these fry ourselves and remove the eggs when the parents lay them, and hatch these eggs out ourselves. Now, we've been having trouble doing this. I've been texting and calling a lot of different people and fish keepers and breeders that breed these guys, and I'm coming up with a few different methods. So this isn't as straightforward as other people. Like I've said before in previous vlogs, this fish room's not at home, and that makes everything in this fish room 10 times more challenging because breeding fish takes quite a bit of effort and a lot of constant work, and if you're not here to see things happening all the time or to do constant feedings, it does make it a little bit more tricky. So I've come up with a few different ways I'm going to try and raise these guys up, but we'll talk about that in a second. But if you come around and have a look at all these tanks, you can see they've just kind of, been neglected a little bit, and there's some hair algae growing everywhere, and the tanks are a little bit dirty. Now this doesn't affect the fish, but what happens is with rams, the pair will breed a couple of times and then the pair will just kind of get a little bit sick of each other and the amount of spawns that they have goes down. So this is when you need to start rearranging pairs and trying to get them to pair off again with new fish. This will rejuvenate them and get them to breed and spawn more often for you. So what I have to do is disassemble these dirty tanks and reassemble them and introduce some new pairs. So you can see here I'm going around the fish room, emptying out all these tanks and giving them a little bit of a clean out for the next fish that are going into them. And while I was in the process of taking down these aquariums and setting them up for more ram breeding, I thought I'd quickly take the opportunity to show you guys how I normally set up a ram breeding tank. It's very simple. This isn't my idea and this isn't revolutionary, but what I like to do is use these terracotta pots, and I'll either break them up or keep them solid, as you can see here. And what I try to do is add some kind of spawning site to every corner in the tank. Now, all of these tanks will house 2 pairs at the start, so 2 males and 2 females of rams, and then as the rams pair off and start to beat each other up, I'll try and take out the subdominant and just leave one single pair in there for breeding. Now this pair will probably breed 2 or 3 times, and then I'll have to do that process again. So that's why it's good to have a constant supply of rams that you can continue to pull from and breed from. Now you can see here that I've added pots in each of the corners, and what I like to do as well is use the half terracotta pots as a backing for the rams to hide behind, and then I'll put a rock or something there so that they can spawn on it, because these guys love to either spawn on terracotta pots or really dark flat rocks in my opinion. So if you can find some of them like in a local park, they're really good, but you can see here I've added spawning sites to each corner of the tank, and this is my ideal ram tank. And I'll also go ahead and sink a piece of wisteria down the bottom with a stone on top of it to just grow and form a little bit of a bush, and this will help to form some infusoria in the tank, and it just helps to keep the tank a little bit more stable, and in my opinion it brings the tank to life. So you don't have to add a plant to the tank. Personally, it's just something that I like to do. So that's my ideal ram tank. Now it's been a few more days and we're back in the fish room here, and you can see that we've set up most of our ram tanks. Now there is a little bit of cleaning to do in a couple of them, but nonetheless everything's starting to look pretty good. In fact, we've actually already had a spawn over in our Dark Knight ram tank. So you can see here our female is on top of some eggs. Now there are quite a few infertilized eggs in this batch, and I'm not too sure whether this batch is going to be fertilized, but what we're going to do is take this batch out, hopefully hatch them and try and raise them in the new method that we're going to be raising them. So the way we're going to be doing this is if we come over to our fry system, you can see here I've got these beautiful fry trays that I created about a year ago using Dean from Dean's Fish Rooms method of raising fry. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a hatching container up the top of this fry container. We're going to hatch out these eggs, hopefully get them to free swimming stage, and then we're going to transfer them down to the bottom where we're going to start to do the feeding and raise these guys up a little bit more, because part of the problem I had last time is for some reason the batch went to a corner of the container and didn't really move from there, and they're all huddled together up the top of the container and they all just died. They never started to eat, and yeah, it was really frustrating. So I found a lot of the other breeders like to use like a white container, and I figured that this container would be perfect for these guys to be in. Now I'm not too sure why they were doing the huddling. This might have been due to some water parameter issue, or it could have been stress that they were scared because the tank was dark or something like that. So nonetheless, we have to change something, and hopefully this method will work. Now if this works, I'm obviously going to go more into detail on how I did it, but for the most part this is just an experiment, and I'm not even sure whether these eggs are going to hatch. So you can see here I've set them up. I've of course added a couple of drops of methylene blue, and that should work out really well. Now, if you come around and have a look at the rest of the tanks, you can see that we've already got some rams pairing off. I've already had to pull some of the subdominant rams out of these tanks and leave the dominant pairs in there. So I'm hoping that we will get a lot more spawning now that we've set these up. And I'm really excited to try and figure out the best way to raise these rams up. Anyways guys, I think we're going to leave it there. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like down below. There's going to be plenty more of these guys coming out, and I'll see you in the next one.